My name is Ron Ginosar, and I'm happy to start the session. The first speaker is Dr. or Professor Yaakov Roisin. Yaakov received his PhD in 1978 in the Academy of Science in the USSR in Novosibirsk. And then 1992 received the Doctor of Science Hub from the Moskva Institute of Electronic Techniques. And 2 years later, he received a professor from the Ministry of Higher Education of Ukraine. And then he came to Israel, and since then he has been with Tower and now Tower Jazz, where he is a fellow. Yaakov.
זהו? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, thank you for introducing me. I'm going to present the industrial view on the resistive memories, which we think are promising for applications. Okay. First of all, I would like, because I got such a nice introduction for myself, I would like to say a few words about our company, Tower Jazz. You know it as Tower Semiconductor. The headquarters is in Migdal HaEmek, close to Technion. Here we have 2 fabs. We have also a fab in Newport Beach, California, and a fab near Kobe, Nishiwaki in Japan. We are a specialty pure play semiconductor foundry. This means that we don't have our own products and fabricate products of our customers using the technologies which have been developed in our fabs. The capacity of the company is approximately 1,700,000 wafers per year, and the total revenues are about $700 million United States dollars, and about more than 3,000 people work in the company, out of them about 1,200 in Israel. Why I am presenting the field of resistive memories? We do not fabricate resistive memories, and actually nobody in the world fabricates resistive memories at present. By resistive memories, I don't mean phase change memories, which were excellently presented by the previous speaker. I'm speaking about the resistive memories, which are based on oxides of metals, on different halcogenide materials with metals. And also, I will a little bit focus on magnetic memories, because this is within the field of interest of Tower Jazz, and some activities are currently performed in the company. More on top of it, we are making CMOS base for several companies which are interested and which are developing the resistive memories. So we can say that some information in the field that could be interesting for the audience we really have. The outline of the presentation will be as follows. First of all, I will review the advantages and expectations from resistive RAM. I guess the previous presenters already gave very good introduction, and it makes my job much easier. Then I will speak about the resistive RAM global footprint, what's happening in the world. Then we will review the types of resistive RAMs, the switching mechanisms in brief, resistive RAM schematics and the reorganization, challenges, and in the very end, I will report on what is going in the field of magnetic memories in Tower Jazz. It's a joint project with Crocus Technologies, thermally assisted switching in magnetic memories. So advantages and expectations. As we have already discussed, resistive RAM means that information is stored by different resistances. Set is low, reset is high state. Different type of resistive memories. I'm focusing only on metal oxides, and also I will speak a little bit on contact bridge resistive RAM. Probably they are in a more advanced stage from the point of view of practical applications. Why resistance memories? It was already reported. Resistance is easier to measure compared with charge in scaled down EPROMs, where in the floating gate you have only a few hundreds of electrons. In this case, a lot of problems appear. Resistive memories can overcome this basic problem. Then the switching voltage is much lower than in floating gate flash, several volts, and the currents could be as low as 100 microamps or even less. The memory is fast. Less than 10 nanosecond switching times were demonstrated. Altogether, this allows to make the periphery of the circuit much easier. You don't need high voltage transistors, and you don't need high current circuitry. So power consumption is one of the main advantages of this memory. The next advantage is the simple structure, relatively low cost. From the point of view of semiconductor industry, it's small amount of additional masks to the core CMOS. It has high density and good scalability. Cells actually as small as 10 nanometers by 10 nanometers were demonstrated, one of the works from IMEC, but limitations probably will come not due to the size of the cell, but for different reasons that we will discuss. It is compatible with CMOS if the choice of material is correct. It has high endurance, many program array cycles, 1 million demonstrated, but probably it will never be what is called a universal memory that could substitute DRAM or SRAM. There are reliability problems which limit the endurance. It's rather flexible in design. It's possible to optimize it from the schematechnical point of view to get or high density, or high speed of data exchange. Rather flexible in design, convenient for design. As it was already mentioned, it's interesting and promising to emulate biological systems, artificial synapses, and so on. First of all, when I go to the data in this presentation, it's necessary to mention that the resistive RAM is a very old memory. Actually, it's known since the 60s of the previous century. And what is good now for the developers, for the companies, that practically all the basic patents expire. And so you can develop without any concerns about patent violations. The last advertisement to resistive RAM was surprisingly made by Eli Harari, who is a very known our guy, coming from Israel and one of the fathers of this modern memories. He recently retired from the position of the CEO of SanDisk. So he announced a week ago, a little bit more, that the resistive RAM in the three-dimensional configuration will substitute EEPROM memories at the 11 nanometer node. Before that, he thinks that the floating gate will still be dominating. So, okay. I'm sorry. Okay. 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 So this is the situation. This is the situation with the challenges, advantages of this memory. I would like to say that actually resistive memories are in OTP, one-time programming version, are widely used in industry. For example, this is an example of integration. The company is called Matrix. It was bought by SanDisk some years ago. It's a kind of three-dimensional memories where there are diodes to facilitate crosswise array, as it was explained by Nuri, and simply resistors, which are in this design layers of silicon dioxide that you can break down these resistors, you can break down the oxide, and to have 1 or 0. But it is not possible to reprogram this memory. It's only can hold 0 or 1 in each of the bits. There are other examples of the same type of the memory, for example, based on the switching phenomena in the gate oxide, in the rupture, in the breakdown of the gate oxides. Two companies are known for gate oxide, so-called antifuses, Kilopass and Sidens. Also, it's a small company which is called Novacell. And in the back end of the CMOS microcircuit, the same principle was used by QuickLogic. We up till present, we are fabricating these microcircuits in Tower. In the back end, you have fuses made of high resistance amorphous silicon that you can break down this fuse, make it breakdown channel, and to have two electrodes connected or not connected. So the memory is absolutely not new. What is new? The desire to make it cyclable, to get high endurance, to allow it make a lot of cycles. And a lot of companies are developing this memory with an outlook to make it cyclable, to have good endurance. From the point of semiconductor industry, it's not only necessary to have a cell that you can cycle, program erase, or set, reset, set, reset. The materials must be compatible with the semiconductor fab. They must be friendly to semiconductor fab. That's why gold is excluded. Everything that contains elements like iron is excluded. So the progress in this field was achieved only in the last years, when people learned how to make high quality dielectric layers, mostly the electric layers of transition, oxides of transition metals. And in most cases, these layers are deposited by the technique which is called atomic layer deposition. So atomic layer deposition, which made a breakthrough in the field of gate oxides for nanoscale CMOS, also made a breakthrough in the field of switchable memories. So let's look at the footprint, what is happening in semiconductor industry in the world. Probably the progress is mostly pronounced in Japan. The main companies are in the field. For example, Fujitsu is working with nickel oxide. Nickel is used in silicidation in advanced nodes of CMOS. It's a friendly material. Sharp is using titanium oxide and cobalt oxide. Renaissance, tantalum oxide and titanium oxide. NEC, tantalum oxide. Panasonic, hafnium oxide. Renaissance, tantalum, the second time I mentioned. Sony is making something else. It is connected on chalcogenide glasses. The mentioned Elpida uses hafnium oxide. Unfortunately, Elpida announced the bankruptcy, so it's not clear if the bankruptcy is connected with resistive memory or not. We still hope it's connected with the decrease of the demands in the DRAM market. Anyway, so there is also one company very interesting. It actually, I repeat what was announced in one of the previous talks. The company which is called Srioike in Japan is working on resistive RAMs on the flexible substrates. So this is in Japan. Also in SMIC in China, there is a resistive memory. Samsung is working with nickel oxide. In Taiwan, TSMC works in tioxide, and so on. In Europe, IBM, Infineon, STM are engaged. In the United States, Hewlett-Packard is in titanium oxide field. They make their so-called memristors from titanium oxide. This is what we know. Unfortunately, we didn't see any data from HP besides the nice picture which was shown today, the string, and hope that we will see soon. and a lot of startups that are trying to, each of them having their own idea. For example, there is a very interesting startup, Monolithic 3D, which is trying to make a very original three-dimensional system consisting of resistive RAM cells. Very good outlook for high-density integration. Also, among the startups, I would like to emphasize the company which is called Adesto, which is engaged in PCM, PMC, programming utilization cell, or contact bridge memory. One of the guys whom you probably know is Shain Nahumovsky, that worked for Tower for many years, actually is one of the general managers of this company. They're in a very advanced state, and so other companies as well. So you see that there is a large interest, a really large interest in the world, and such a large interest cannot be simply due to nice words, memristor or something like that. So really, there is a reliable mechanism of switching that is explored. It's yet not in the production mode, but it has large potential. Now, I'm obliged to compare resistive RAM, which was with what was previously reported, phase change memory. Phase change memory is also from the field of resistive memories. We got a very nice presentation on it, very clear. I want to add only one sentence. What is the difference between the phase change memory and the resistive memories that I'm describing? The difference is that though the effect in the phase change material, in the heterogeneous glass, is local, it is a bulk effect. It's a bulk transition from the amorphous to crystalline stain and vice versa. In case of resistive RAM, the effect is local. It's a channel. It's a filament. And there are and that's why, though it's possible to scale phase change memories, the currents in phase change memories during the set-reset procedures are rather high. The expectation is that in resistive memories, the currents will be low. This is probably the only advantage, because from the other points of view, how the arrays are built, what are the expectations from the applications, it's very similar. Also, in case of resistive memories, there are limitations on scaling the currents. I will speak about it. But nevertheless, most experts think that it's possible to get with resistive RAM, with oxide cells, to lower currents and low power consumptions. Now, what are the promises? What people are promising in the industry? So as I said, currently there is nobody that even in pilot production, and of course in mass production, who holds an ability to fabricate microcircuits with resistive RAM. Panasonic, probably the leader. Maybe Panasonic, maybe Elpida. Now, probably after bankruptcy of Elpida, Panasonic. They promised to start production of 2 megabit resistive RAM modules. Please pay attention that the modules of all companies are small. 2 megabit here, 64 megabit here. This is much, much less than the modern NAND memories. So already this year they announced a very interesting idea, a new version of their memory with a double-sided select diode. And they plan to start fabricating it in 2-3 years. HP announced memristors, but it's a cat in the sack. Nobody knows what's going there practically. As I said, we hope. So this is what can be expected. Now a few words about the technology and physics. My work is much easier because actually all this was understood, was already reported. I want to add some comments. That's why I'm forced to repeat some of the things already reported by the previous presenters. So there are 2 types of resistive memory, unipolar and bipolar. Unipolar, you increase voltage, there is switching, then you rise the voltage up. The cell is in the low resistance states, then there is again reset, switching to the high resistance state. In case of bipolar, two directions of voltages. You put plus to the top electrode or minus to the top electrode. This is the way how you switch the cell. Actually, in most cases, you can get both types of programming, unipolar programming and bipolar programming, from the same material. For example, Samsung started from the unipolar memory based on tantalum oxide. Then they put on top of tantalum oxide, which was non-stoichiometric with the deficit of oxygen. They put a layer of stoichiometric tantalum oxide and brought the cell in the situation that they could switch it bipolarly. So, but generally, from the point of view of practical application, bipolar version is preferable. This is even though to make an array is easier from unipolar cells. And this is the reason why phase change memory is good. Phase change memory is good. You can force pulses of current in one direction. Here you have to force currents in two directions. Why unipolar is not good? There are severe reliability problems with one unipolar memory. Probably thermal effects are strongly, the switching is probably reset operation is probably based on thermal effects. It's a thermal rupture of the filament in unipolar resistive RAMs. That's why the degradation is more pronounced and the switching is less controlled compared with the bipolar situation. But in case of bipolar situation, it's more difficult to make the memory array. This is the problem. There are compromises in this side. So the choice of industry is bipolar cells. So what is bipolar cell? Bipolar cell, this is a true picture from IMEC. It's written here metal oxides, it's hafnium oxide. IMEC are working with hafnium oxide. The same mechanism of switching is reported for hafnium oxide and titanium oxide. I had a picture from one of the papers in Nature about the titanium oxide, but most of the experts in industry actually agree with the mechanism which was already reported here of switching in dual polarity resistive RAM cells. So during the formal procedure, there is the reaction of losing hydrogen. The material becomes non-stoichiometric, and there is a connection of the bottom electrode with the top electrode. And during reset and set operations, there are actually oxidation and reduction processes in the vicinity of the top electrode. In this case, this is a platinum electrode. So the channel which was built and corresponds to the deficiency of oxygen, that is why it is conductive, is oxidized by reaction with oxygen near the top electrode when there is plus on this electrode. And again, there is a reduction and recreation of the filament if there is a minus on the top electrode. So oxidation and reduction of the filament, which was previously formed during the forming procedure, is the mechanism of operation. So you see that compared with phase change, there is an operation of forming. This is not good, because forming needs high currents. You need to place in the circuit a power charge pump to make forming, or you have to make forming during the sort. But these are large arrays, and so from commercial point of view, such forming will take a lot of time in the fab, and the memory, the advantages of low cost go away. So it's not so easy. Now, how do people solve these problems? How they try to facilitate the process of forming? In most modern designs, most of the companies do not use a single layer of the dielectric of the oxide of the transition metal. Usually it's a two-layer structure. One has stoichiometric content or close to stoichiometric content, and on top you place an under stoichiometric material. So in this case, non-stoichiometric material contacts during forming with the cathode. Anode is as shown in the picture. So due to the fact that this area is non-stoichiometric, you have a lot of oxygen vacancies in this case. And these oxygen vacancies can be more easily extracted from this layer, and thus the filament during forming is made more easily. And you can get good uniformity and reproducibility of the elements over the area of the wafer. Now, just to summarize what was said, so the main effects in the switching are connected with reduction, oxidation near one of the electrodes, and the area, the volume of this area where this process happens is only tenths of angstroms. It's necessary to understand that in this area near the electrode, the densities of current are very high. So thermal effects are inevitably included in operation of the device. And this is not good. If these thermal effects are on purpose controlled in phase change memories, here the control is possible to much less extent. So most of the models of oxidation, recombination, reduction, oxidation, they need to take into account not only the chemistry, but also the chemistry plus thermal effects. On top of it, there are problems connected with the electrode. You need to make an electrode because the space which is isolating or conducting is so small that you have to take an electrode with high work function in order to suppress injection in the reset state. It's approximately the same choice of materials like for the electrodes as in P-type MOS transistors in advanced technologies. The same principles. You need a material that actually has a high work function and is not very easily oxidized also. Why? Because if it is easily oxidized, the reset state will become set state by itself at elevated temperature. The retention will be lost. So the choice of metals is critical for these cells. A lot of problems. What is the conduction? What is the mechanism of the conductivity of this tiny space of several tens of angstroms in the filament, which is actually converted into conductive or non-conductive state? Nobody knows exactly, but it is considered that it could be a space charge conductivity, hopping conductivity, dimensioned conductivity connection, changes of conductivity connected with MOT metal insulator transition, different possibilities. Each of the group has its own model. What is important that this is the current flow in a very tiny volume, And so it's very difficult to understand what is the mechanism for several reasons. And one of the main reasons is how do you make the measurements? Because the filament is formed by current which passes through the dielectric film, and there are abrupt changes of resistance, the capacitance of the structure and the capacitance of the load, the capacity of the cables which are used in the lab when the measurements are performed have critical influence. So the capacitance is higher, you have higher charge that will flow into the leakage, into the filament. And higher the current, the more advanced will be the filament. So during the forming procedure, the final resistance will depend significantly on the value of the current, on the value of the charge that passed through the system. Actually, this is the principle of working of the memristor. So more charge, more change in the resistance. So it's very good when modeling a memristor But for the practical microcircuit, it's a problem. You need to control the forming procedure both from the DC point of view and both from the AC, capacitor load point of view. So moving back to the memristor model, actually the memristor model is very similar to what I mentioned. Also, titanium oxide and non-stoichiometric titanium oxide, like in the designs of all the memories that I mentioned that maybe are not considered as memristors, but simply as for storage of 0, 1. In case of memristors, one of the main model is the moving of the interface between the stoichiometric and non-stoichiometric titanium oxide, so that the space is small, more narrow near the minus electrode in the reduced case compared with the oxidized case. So this is the switching, moving of the interface, different resistance in the memristor. From the point of view of the memories that I am explaining, okay. From the point of view of memories, it is a very similar mechanism. Okay. So now a few words about PMC, bridging memories. In this case, the mechanism was already explained. I want to add only one thing. In case of the contact bridge memories, the bulk material is now chalcogenide. And for example, silver is moved into the system. There is doping of initial material with silver. The principle of operation is probably the following. When you switch the material, when you switch it on, when you set it, you put positive voltage on the silver electrode, you move the silver atoms inside the film, and the percolation path is created because the percolation threshold is overcome. So there are already silver atoms and no percolation path. You add a little atoms and percolation path is created. During reset, the percolation part is dissolved. Again, only a tiny region near the electrode is dissolved. And this is the real circuit which was developed by Desto, reported at the previous year IEEE International Memory Workshop. It's a 1 megabit EEPROM-like circuit that works very well, but still is not in the productization level because there are reliability problems, as for most resistive RAMs. Now a few words about the arrays. As it was already reported, to make an array you need select transistors. You cannot make crosswise arrays because you will have so-called sneak effects. The current will bypass the memory cell. You will never know if the cell is programmed or not. So different companies use different principles in array organization. For example, SMIC use a system with select transistors. Each of the cells is supplied with a select transistors. In this case, when there are select transistors, CMOS limits scaling. The advantage of scaling is lost. So people wish to make so-called 1R, 1D resistive RAM. In this case, it's easy to make a matrix in case of unipolar switching. If the voltage is applied to the memory cell, each of the memory cells is at the cross sections of the bit lines and word lines. If it is unipolar, so you can place a diode. It's known how to make the diodes in the back end of the CMOS, and it will work. But what to do in case you have a bipolar switching? The breakthrough solution was proposed this year by Panasonic. They made a kind of a bipolar Zener type select diode with such a characteristics that it opens in two directions. And they put this bipolar diode in series with the memory cells. In this case, what is the price for this goodie? The price that now the bipolar device, bipolar select device, that also has a resistance comparative with the resistance of the switched memory cell, is put in series with it. And so the ratio of set reset resistances, which was in the previous Panasonic design about 20, now decreased only to 4. But still the system works very well. So this is considered the best solution at the schematechnic layer which exists now in the world. Panasonic's crosswise architecture with bipolar Zener type select diodes. Now a few words about scaling, about integration. Okay? If you want now to make a very dense memory, you may try putting layers on layers, layer on layer. But in this case, you must put many additional masks. So the memory stops being so sexy because you pay by a large amount of masks for making the same density as you get in case of NAND. But these problems could be solved by special three-dimensional design. So what are the challenges? What are the challenges for these memories? First of all, difficult to control the material. Resistance levels of set-reset states depend strongly on compliance and capacitive load during switching. There is a critical trade-off between reset currents and reliability. At the array level, the main problem for scaling down is not the cell but metallization. If you go to the levels of scaling with the CDs of approximately 10 nanometer, this is what Eli Harari means by 11 nanometer technology node. The metal lines will be so thin, so narrow that the effects of electromigration, grain structure of metals start become pronounced. So the conclusion that hardly this memory will substitute NAND scale down to less than 20 nanometers at the industrial scale. But this doesn't mean that this memory is not important. It's very important because there are a lot of niche applications. Niche applications, for example, embedded applications. Applications as in computers where you need to make buffers, non-volatile buffers, where this memory can be used. Another 3 minutes? 3 minutes? 2, okay. And the last message about the MRAM. Our company is developing MRAM with Crocus technology. MRAM, magnetic resistive memory, is also from the field of resistive memory. The principle is absolutely different. The principle is changing of the resistance of the magnetic tunnel junction where there are two vectors in the top and bottom layers. Depending on polarization of the top and bottom layers, you can get different resistances. This memory has practically the same advantages as the other types of resistive RAMs. Low operation voltages, high densities, and so on. What is the advantage of this type of memories? The advantage of this type of memory, I will lose some slides and go to the last slides. The advantage of this memory is in schematechnics. It's possible to make new schematechnical solutions. I focus on it because this session is connected with schematechnics of resistive memories. This is what we got in Tower Jazz. This is our cell. Two magnetic layers. Between them, there is a tunnel oxide through which the electrons having magnetic polarization move. This is how it looks in reality, integrated in 0.13 copper backend. And this is the last message that I wanted to show you, a new schematechnical idea which can be realized with magnetic memory and cannot be realized with resistive RAMs of other type. In this case, you make magnetic stacks which do not have reference layers. Usually, magnetic stack has a reference layer and a storage layer. You store information in the storage layer while the reference layer is fixed. Here, I don't have reference layers. I make reference layers by forcing currents through special metal lines. At the same time, information can be stored in the storage layers which are shown on the top of memory cells. I connect the memory cells in series, and now I don't want to read out information from this system. I wish to compare information which was written and which is applied to the microchip. For example, it's a security engine. Yeah, I record the information, then I put my, for example, smart card into the slot of the machine and get some code. If code is the same, nothing changes. Code is the same as was used for making reference cell, nothing changes. If not, the resistance of the NAND string, of the string of the cells connected in series changes. I make two samplings before and after applying external signals, and I can perform execution in place, comparing the codes in place, very fast, for a few nanoseconds, without any signals outside this system. Absolute security. This is one of the applications of the magnetic resistive memories. So now, simply to summarize and to make some conclusions. So bipolar resistive RAM based on materials compatible with the silicon technology, these are the materials, are developed in parallel with NAND, and they're competitors of PCM, phase change, and MRAM. Main distinguishers are low voltages, speed, and they're relatively cheap. They're promising guys, but whether they would dominate in the future non-volatile memory market, it's too early to say. Very difficult to say. Probably niche applications like cache memory in computers, embedded memory in mobile applications, artificial synapses, will be the field of their applications, not the general storage non-volatile memories. And out of all the versions from the schematechnical point of view, the three-dimensional back-end NVM, different versions, both floating gate and resistive, there are the main candidates for the post-NAND memories. So anyway, resistive RAM, NAND, phase change memory, the future will be three-dimensional. This is the consensus of the experts in the field. Thank you very much for your attention.